Well, hello. Already messed up. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a video here. We are revisiting once again Dr. Peter's sci-fi classics, sort of sporadic series that we do from time to time here. Hello, Dr. Peter.
Hey Joe, how's it going?
It's going all right. It's going all right. Enjoying my day off and trying to talk about some Dune because you suggested this out of the blue. You wanted to talk about Dune because Dune Part Two just came out and you had some thoughts about it. I actually haven't really heard your thoughts about the movie, so we're going to hear it live now, basically for the first time.
Yeah, so the short review is it's if you liked Dune Part One, you're gonna like Dune Part Two. It is I think it's better in a lot of ways than the first film in part because it does give us more perspectives of different characters, particularly Chani, who gets a lot more screen time this time around for obvious narrative reasons. She kind of is barely in, a few dream sequences in the first one, um, but yeah, I think it's a technical achievement. It is a great film. I saw it in IMAX. I
Ooh.
think opening weekend, um, and it definitely fit the venue. It was big and um, enjoyable. Although I do have some issues with it that maybe we'll get into as we go. But
Oh,
certainly recommended. Although I would not say it is one of the best films of the century, as
oh,
some people have already jumped on as this is
oh,
again, it still
wow.
feels like an incomplete story as well, but we can dig into that.
All right. Well, I mean, I knew it was doing well, but I guess I didn't realize that the zeitgeist had reached that zenith in the cultural terms, because I know I definitely hear about it. Some of my students actually talked about it, and that's something about the new films that I really do enjoy is the fact that it definitely has increased knowledge and
Mhm.
appreciation of the Dune universe, made it more mainstream than. I mean, I guess I want to say maybe not that I ever thought possible, but that I ever expected. And yeah, but it's certainly quite loved. I enjoyed the movie. I posted a little article on the Manduke movie blog, plug, if you want to check out my more specifics. But I really liked the movie. I had a couple of minor gripes with it as well. I don't know if they're as big as yours. We'll talk about it. But I agree. I thought it was tactical achievement, really on the same level as the first one. More going on in it because we're really delving more into the aspect of the war in Arrakis, more so than the Lynch movie did because it was just kind of rushed. One of my favorite parts of the movie where like and Paul, attacks Raban's Thopters and achieves his holy war, and Alia is born. Chani and him fall in love, and now we're at the end of the movie.
Mhm.
It's one of the best parts. Uh, whereas we actually get to see all that unfold in part two, which is great. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it, and I am kind of curious though. I mean, I don't know. I'm so biased that I don't know. I'd probably have to watch the movie again. But of course, I'm really happy with it as well. And I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say it's one of the best things ever made, but in some ways, technically speaking, I think as you said, an achievement. Visual, sound design, all that. So I don't know. But as you know, I have this nostalgic attachment and kind of a weird appreciation for all things David Lynch. So I still think I kind of like the '84 film more in some ways, but also the miniseries too, which we'll talk about. So I'm talking too much. Tell me your loves more specific and your gripes with part two, Peter, because I'm curious to see if they match up with mine.
Yeah, so I think we're of a similar background as far as this goes. I read the Dune books, or not the complete run, but pretty close to in high school, and watched the Lynch version again, like probably around the same time. So it's definitely kind of been part of my background in science fiction. It's not where I entered necessarily, but kind of in that moment. My mom had a big box of old paperbacks in the basement that included Dune and Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, and I sought out some of the later weirder ones after that. Although didn't at some point fell off kind of the Dune train, as it were. Um,
You fell off the literal dune.
yeah, fell off that sandworm. Um, and part of it is, and I rewatched the Lynch version recently with my wife, because she'd never seen it, and it was
Oh.
actually a way to kind of, okay, let's um, get caught up, as it were, because rather than just watch the Dune Part One. One of the things I think the Lynch version does better is it explains the relationships and connections and the plot, the fact that the
I guess you're right.
emperor, yeah, the literal plot of emperor's plot, and why this is happening, in a way that I think you kind of need to have some sense of going into the Villeneuve films. You kind of need that background to know, okay, here's the setup, here's these warring houses, here's the connections, here's um, the Bene Gesserit plotting a very long con, and how everything
The long
connects.
game.
Yeah, just this massive amount of world building that I think does sometimes get overlooked in the Villeneuve versions, including Dune Part Two.
Mm.
They never really explain in these films why we don't have computers. That is a pretty crucial part of uh, everything in this world. So there is that kind of gaps, things that I knew, and things that I think the Lynch version did very well. And I would add with the Lynch version too, that does get to kind of the weirder, dreamier aspects of Dune. Uh, the Spacers Guild, and other things that we just don't get in the Villeneuve versions. They're more grounded. They don't do quite as much of the utter weirdness that we get in '84. That I think is closer to what Herbert intended, even if the technology
Hmm.
wasn't there.
Huh. Well, no, it's interesting to hear you say that because no, I do agree. I mean, it's really interesting how there's always like kind of a pro and a con that's really intertwined because for a long time, David Lynch's movie was kind of bashed for all the exposition dumps and everybody kind of literally thinking their feelings, but we hear all those internal monologues. But I think you're right. It definitely adds to the weirdness and the dreamlike nature of so many of those monologues and just the concepts. And yeah, the concept with the mentats and the need for thinking machines due to the fear of what happened in the many thousands of years before the machine wars. Yeah, that's something that they don't dive into too much in the Lynch version, but you get a sense of, oh, like the mentats, they stand out and like, okay, we need these people genetically modified to do all the computing for us, and our technology is mostly kind of limited and grounded. You're right, and I do think Lynch really did a great job of really just building that world that way. And I think with the Villeneuve one, it's interesting you say that they do kind of gloss over some things. I noticed that too. They like for instance, I don't think in either of the new films they don't really mention much about what spice does in terms of space travel. We never literally see it, and that's economically, that's kind of the reason the whole war plot, backstabbing intrigue happens, and they don't really talk or go into it much. Which you're right. It's sort of. I mean, maybe he thought that that was a wise decision because I do like the new ones a lot. So I don't want to sound like I'm some sort of I'm a a grubby elitist. You're like, the old, I'm just sticking to the old. Like I think that the new one, when I talk about I think I mentioned it in my little article that I wrote, it was, I think that you might agree, it focuses a lot on those characters of Paul. It's very character driven, and it's really kind of entangled with the more traditional idea of the hero's journey. It's kind of leading more into the big epic fantasy element, which I think is one reason why people can gravitate to it. I literally heard one of my students say the other day, trying to get another student to watch it, that the Dune is the new Star Wars,
Mhm.
which I kind of have mixed feelings about because, like, okay, we're taking the character stuff, the heroic journey, the fantasy elements, and we're streamlining it and really focusing on building those up so that those are the most accessible elements of family and honor and revenge and that whole the chosen one. But and they do kind of delve a little more, of course, into the what Herbert was talking about, the danger of the
Mhm.
Messiah idea and how that could be corrupted, which I think is they do talk about that a bit in this movie, but I still feel like it's glossed over. Whereas the Lynch one, I don't. I feel like the Lynch one leaned a little more into just he is the chosen one, kind of.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which even though he was kind of like a lot of them will die in my name, maybe Kyle MacLachlan didn't feel so great about that. But so I don't know. I think that he Villeneuve definitely chose to, for the sake of making it accessible, he focused on certain aspects of Dune that I think the core of it is there, which is why I like it so much. But at the same time, you're right. There are also key details of the world and what makes Dune unique that maybe have still been left out. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, it's I like a lot of the Fremen stuff in Dune Part Two because it does expand on that. I mean, the Lynch version just like Chani's not a character. She is mentioned in she's in like two scenes, but it's mostly just mentioned Paul and Chani grew close and it did Lynch is I mean Lynch is basically hired to go make a Star Wars.
Mhm.
That there's
Well,
never really that undercurrent. Although I think that would make that point with Dune Part Two that we get hints of what's coming. We get hints of Dune
mhm,
Messiah. We get hints of the disagreements. Like the Fremen are not all just like, yeah, Paul is the our savior. It is that sense
Maslow
of
Gaib.
disagreement, and he has to kind of win things over, and it's more of a process. I think even maybe more so than Herbert's books, at least again the first one.
Mhm,
But it is, but it did feel like I wanted more of that. It's something that I think the sci-fi miniseries gets better in part
mm,
because I think they it was more intentionally part of a larger production. I don't know if they shot them all together or close to, but that felt like more of a um, complete piece, which is part of my, can't I feel like I can't pass judgment on Villeneuve's films until we get Dune Messiah and another 3 years or whenever it comes along because I want to see how
mm,
he's going to deal with it, how he's going to what pieces that he's laid down here are going to get picked up and how is he going to actually deal with the limits of um, you know Messiah worship and the um, utter craziness that's going to unfold in the next even if we don't go beyond Messiah, but actually dealing with kind of the
mm.
outcomes of all this.
Dealing kind of with Paul's fall, which is I think Dune Messiah. I'll admit I think just to back up a little bit here, I was introduced to Dune at a very early age because of the David Lynch movie,
Mhm.
which I found kind of intriguing. Somehow it connected with me on some level. And then I read the first book years later, which I loved. So I kind of have that reverse thing there. And but I'll admit I never read any of the books beyond that. I wanted to. I recently got Dune Messiah and started to read it. And the only reason I know about what happens next is because of the miniseries
Mhm.
and Children of Dune, which I really liked, and
Yeah.
I wanted to definitely pick your brain on that because I want to let people know that those are pretty underrated. I think hardcore Dune fans of the books know, but I want to kind of use this as a like, hey, if you're listening to this, check it out because you'll get a preview of what may come down the line. And personally, for me, I don't know if it's not my personal favorite necessarily, but I do think that in some ways it's the best. And in some ways, it's definitely the best adaptation of the
Mhm.
books as the characters, as the world's pictured, and they delve more into the economics, into the world, the mythology of it, the lore. And another thing I really liked about the movie too, the costumes. Like for
Mm,
as low budget as they are, it's colorful, and I still don't think we've gotten. I mean, I guess the Lynch version had some pretty good ones, but
yeah.
those elaborate, grand nobility elements that are just there because it's like the medieval times in space. I think they really sell that well in those. But tell me your thoughts on those, Peter.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think yeah, with the miniseries, the costumes are. I think that does get because the problem I think with the Villeneuve version is that and I get that they're we're all in noble houses, but everything's very black. Everything's very similar. And
Gray and dark, yeah.
yeah, gray and dark, and there is differences, but and I get and I think they're playing up the similarities between House Atreides and House Harkonnen, that they're, as we learn at the end of the film, they're connected.
Mhm.
Um, Although even here it feels like kind of a last
It's
minute.
forced, it's
Yeah,
rushed.
yeah.
Oh, I
Um,
hated that part. Actually, yeah, I'll hold off. I want us to talk more about
yeah.
this, but I will tell you. I'm going to make you guess what you think my least favorite thing about the Villeneuve movies is in a little bit. But go ahead, tell me
Yeah.
more about Dune,
Um,
Children of Dune.
yeah, but I think Lynch got this. I think got the spectacle better. In a way that and I liked a lot of what Villeneuve did, and I liked the Harkonnen stuff. I liked seeing the home world and the having that, like,
Oh,
the sun, or moon or whatever it is shining on there, and kind of that um alienness that um you know as much as I enjoyed the Lynch version, he kind of just went for the Harkonnens are gross. Whereas here they felt like something totally different. Though it
mhm.
left me wanting more with the Atreides and do, okay, so what, and I get that there are heroes, but they talk about that idea of, okay, we're swimmers and this and that, and water has this kind of part of our life, but the planet just looked like, oh, look, it's England. It's space.
Ireland, space.
Yeah, yeah. It's just, look, here's our green
well,
cliffs overlooking the oceans.
well,
That felt like a missed opportunity.
I don't know if we don't spend much time in any of the movies, and I don't think we spend a ton of time even in the first book on their planet actually,
No.
Caladan. I don't think we
Yeah.
do. Um, which yeah, I agree. It would it to find a way to separate them because yeah, they definitely make it seem like I guess in both versions they make it seem the Harkonnens are living a very different lifestyle. At Lynch's
Mhm.
version, it's much more artificial. It's H.R. Geiger inspired, and all the mechanics and sludge and pipes everywhere, fumes, like everybody's dripping in toxic waste or something. And this new one, it's almost like a harsh environment. Everybody's militarized. Everybody looks the same. They're all the pale skin. So, but I, yeah, I agree. There's definitely that difference. We see a little more of the Harkonnens. There's still not enough, um, which I think is. All right, I'll just skip ahead and tell you. I think my all right. What do you think my biggest issue with these new movies is? I kind of gave you a clue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it kind of sounds like the Harkonnens, which um I get why they did what they did, and how they did it, but yeah, I was left wanting more. I like the little glimpses we
Well,
got, and they're such a pivotal part of the story that I felt like we kind of traded out and I get the Barons sort of in a bad way for most of this movie, but we kind of traded him out for Fade Rotha in a way that um, with the Lynch version, Fade is part of everything throughout. It's not as though he's like, okay, we gotta like do a big
bring him
intro.
in.
He's just there, and then we get the thing in the metal underwear that everyone remembers.
that everyone loves. Well, I mean, even in the book, that's I love that. I mean, yeah, that's basically what I do want to dive into because I on one hand, I appreciate the version because they're very much going into they're turning the Baron and the Harkonnens into this just representation of evil, of
Mhm.
darkness, and because once again we're leaning more into the classic fantasy clash of good and evil, Star Wars esque. So the Baron is he's almost like a force of nature, which he is kind of scary, but he's also not much of a character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying the Lynch version was much better in this case, but he had a little more personality. We got a little more time with him, I think. And in the book, although it's very different, our first introduction to him is him literally like going into this long monologue of his plans and his feeling of power and excess and talking to, like you said, Fade, and I think Raban are in the room with him. So it's he's this kind of this masterful tactician almost and this aristocrat that we don't really get that except in the miniseries. And
Yeah.
the miniseries, I think, really shows us who the Baron was in the book, whereas in the newest version of Villeneuve, he just doesn't have much of a character. And Fade Routh, you know, I mean, I liked him, I guess, but he also there wasn't much there. But besides, my wife and I also talked about this. They basically turned the Harkonnens into barbaric space Nazis
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, it's always just go back to the easy villain, and they kind of made them Nazis. It's again. So I don't know if that's necessarily what they were going for, but yeah, I don't really like the Harkonnens as much in these films, unfortunately. I think they're
Yeah,
weakling.
yeah, I think the performances were all good. I did like Austin Butler's take on Fade Rotha because it felt very, felt its own thing. But I felt like the character was kind of underwritten and didn't, for the amount of screen time he didn't have much to do. And I liked how they did a better job in Villeneuve versus Lynch of building up. Oh, there's sort of this Bene Gesserit split in their have their he's sort of a candidate for the Messiah as well, and playing up that plots within plots that is
Mm-hmm.
so important to Herbert and the world. That I again, the miniseries is probably the closest. It's an adaptation is the closest to what Herbert wrote, the world he built, and kind of is the one that I think I've seen twice. So I've probably seen the least of it. I've certainly seen the Lynch version like many times, although part of that's just played on TV a lot. Um, but it is, sci-fi is kind of where I go back to and go, yeah, this was actually not without its issues. And I think we talked about this when we talked about the first Dune. It is not without its issues. It is much lower budget, and some things are definitely a product of the early 2000s. There are some
Yeah.
choices, but
Well, it doesn't. Well, you know me. I find a lot of that stuff charming, so it most of that doesn't bother me. I can forgive some, cheaper looking fabric costumes and some
mhm,
CGI worms. Yeah, I can kind of forgive that. But I do think the spirit is definitely there for the miniseries. But yeah, I definitely think it's worth a watch. And I agree. I think Fade Ralph was underwritten a little bit in this. Performance was good. He
mhm,
did. He did. They did kind of do their own thing. But you're right. I think even with the Lynch version, they have that scene where Paul's had the spice and he's seeing the visions, and you see Sting kind of pop up there, be like, I'm going to kill you, because there's that rivalry that they're
mhm.
opposites. On the two pawns in the Bene Gesserit plans is kind of established there. Whereas you're right, and we didn't get him in part one at all, like you said. In part two,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, oh, here's Fade Alpha now. I guess he's the next big bad as well. Oh, that reminds me. Well, I got two things. What did you think of the fantastic addition of Christopher Walken as the Emperor Shaddam IV?
Ooh, I did. I liked his performance. I wish that it was a little more over the top. Um, and again, his
Beta, what do you mean?
I
Over the
know I
top?
wanted him to
I'm the
go.
Emperor.
Yeah, it felt a little too muted. Although some of that was just the costuming because it was very basic. Um, yeah, but
I don't,
yeah, I liked his addition, and it was a good performance. I just wish
uh,
we should gone a little big, and that's a lot of the other than Austin Butler, everyone does kind of play it a little quieter.
mm,
I
well, I, 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 I definitely, I was expecting think it's to go bigger and more over the top with him because in I believe it's Jose Ferrer in the original. I think it is
Yeah.
Miguel Ferrer in one of the Ferrers. He has one of my favorite lines. Where he explains to us the definition of genocide. This is genocide. Wait for it. The systematic destruction of all life on Arrakis. Like he had to make sure his orders were clear. He's very upset. He's very mad.
Yeah.
And he's barely in the Lynch movie, but like that's an emperor. He's got so much power. He's got so much
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
But
He
he's
bookends
also
it. Yeah. But
yeah.
it
He bookends
yeah.
it. And Emperor, we come for you. I like the fact the main villain is sort of kind of almost absent from the film
Mhm.
in a way, or and the story in general. But yeah, then he's also afraid of the Spacing Guild and the Bene Gesserit, so he's kind of upon himself. But yeah, I with the new one, I agree with you. I actually am okay though with Christopher Walken doing it understated
Yeah.
because a lot of Dune is about plotting, and that sort of cloak and dagger stuff. So him being quieter and having a console with his daughter, I just like with a lot of things. I kind of wanted more of him, just in general.
Yeah.
Would have been nice.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
there was an improvement. Again, speaking of the daughter, she had more development here than in the original. She is some visions and
She's
narration.
Irulan.
She starts our movie
Hey,
with that
hey,
big spacey.
no, I agree. I like the fact they worked her in and gave her more character because she has a lot of the logs in the book, which is cool.
Yeah,
But it's hard to beat the giant floating Virginia Madsen exposition head, though. I mean, still pretty iconic, I think.
yeah, it's one of those things. Again, talked about how the Lynch version kind of gets. I think its reputation has been improving. But it's things that shouldn't work, but work in the context because it is Dune. It's things that would not have worked for Star Wars, but work because it's Dune, and it's already a
Yes.
little bit weird and a little bit dreamy and a little bit
Well,
out there.
do you think that if they had done it more like the books, where different sections of the story, different scenes are broken up by little texts or quotes like they are in the books, would that have worked more? Because that's clearly what they were
That would
going
have been,
for with like
yeah.
the diary and the new one and the big head narration at the beginning. Would that you think that would okay, or is that too much reading for a modern audience? Would that be boring? Break it up? What do you think?
No, I think that would be an interesting stylistic choice. Yeah, I think maybe the audience, modern audience would be like, not here to read intertitles, um, but I think it would have, I don't know, it would have been interesting to see that, because of the literary adaptation, because that's structured within the book. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know if it would have
Yeah.
worked. I imagine that Denis Villeneuve made the best movie that he could, and I am not him. So I do feel a little bit like I'm
You're
like,
not.
oh well, if I was running Dune, I would have.
Yes,
Um,
that's it's always easy to say that, but like no,
yeah,
I think what the guys accomplished is incredible. I think it's great.
yeah,
We're mostly nitpicking here, I think.
yes,
Um, but though there is actually one nitpick too. I did mention this, I think, when I wrote it briefly. There's one element, I think it was in the miniseries, and it's this big part of the books that was completely absent from the Lynch version, and it's the you remember there is another family that's involved in the drama, the Fenrings, Count
yeah,
Fenring, and they had his daughter, I believe, in the movie, kind of like seducing Fade because she's working for the Bene Gesserit. She's in like one scene though, and that's it. And I remember thinking, why have, unless they are going to do more with Dune Messiah down the line, like why have that? Because they had whole scenes where they're talking with the Harkonnens and the Emperor, I believe. So like, I thought it was weird that they literally had one scene acknowledging that subplot, but then it's completely absent. Like I feel like you might be really confused if you didn't have any foreknowledge about them.
yeah. That is a good point. And I know that that several people got scenes cut and stuff.
Mm.
Um, that might point to and Villeneuve is clearly considered. It's not as though this is like a work for hire, and if it does well, like he's clearly planning out. Presumably, he said like, yeah, here's thinking about do Messiah. I'm working on a script and this and that. Um, so there is an intentionality there, I think, to what we're getting, what's being left on screen versus what was cut. And I think I imagine there has to be, and again, who knows? The script for Messiah is not written yet. It's things can change.
Hmm.
Um, but it is part of my interest is how close it's going to hew to the Herbert book, whether we are just going to get a straight adaptation, because there are a lot of little changes that Villeneuve has done here that could um, spiral out into something bigger, or could just
Hmm.
be something where he's thinking ahead for this and it just doesn't. Um, but I would be keen to see that, and I'd also be interested to um, spend some more time off of Arrakis itself,
Hmm.
um, as we will as will happen down the line if we decide to go that route.
Well, for the potential of like making more of a blockbuster franchise, I think that there's one piece that I think is maybe, I don't know if he or the other studios were thinking, because they put a lot of money into advertising this. So
Mhm.
it's kind of interesting that with the mixed reception of the first movie and the fact that Dune, for as kind of big as it is, has always been relatively niche, that they really had a lot of confidence in this product and pushed it with their advertising campaigns. So I wonder if they almost knew they had a sure thing, because Villeneuve is such a good director. But Dune Messiah could definitely bring some draw because it'll have the return of Jason Momoa.
Yeah,
If
and
you
that's
remember.
yeah. Spoiler alert for a
Uh-huh.
50-year-old book, but and
Hey,
that's what
some people don't know.
I really liked his take on Duncan Idaho,
Hmm.
and I want that big, loud, campy kind of energy back. Um,
Some humor.
yeah, that um, that I felt like we were lacking. They did some great work here, but as I mentioned, it's a little more understated. Yeah, we had Fade Rotha, that was kind of this more over the top, although in a different way from Sting. I think
Hmm.
both takes were a lot of fun, and sci-fi miniseries. I can't remember who played him there. Um, does pale a little bit in comparison to these, I would say.
Not as big in
Yeah,
grandiosity
yeah,
either.
it's a more workmanlike performance, which is a way of reading the character. It doesn't need to be this
Sure.
rock star. Um,
I mean, that's true. I think that there definitely is. If I remember correctly, there was definitely an evilness to Fade Ralph, though. Like I remember
mhm.
he is part Conan, so everything is ingrained to basically killing each other, rising to power. He's literally thinking about killing his uncle while they're talking. Which they do bring up a couple times. But oddly enough, I think I mean it is hard to kind of beat the literal rock star nature of
Mm.
Sting, because of his presence. But I think that's one thing that is interesting in the Lynch version. There is not as much animosity between the family members with the Harkonnens. Like they're all kind of like buddies, you
Yeah,
know, which is
yeah,
uh which is different, I guess. Like they're not. There's never a scene where they're like, "Oh, I'm waiting to kill the guy," or "Oh, Raban, I'm going to have to murder you now." Like it's not really there. It's interesting.
yeah. I agree. Um, yeah, and I think part of that was just okay. It's a choice that they made, Lynch made, that rather than try to disentangle the um, internal
All the.
disagreements there, we're just going to have a more monolithic villain.
Mhm.
The Harkonnens are united and are going to do their thing, and works a little. It works kind of with that hero's journey
Mhm.
framing that we had there. Though I did like that Villeneuve played up that splits a little more,
Mhm.
and it did work to have, if you're going to save Fade Rotha for the sequel, it actually works that, yeah, maybe we didn't want him on Arrakis because he's a little more unpredictable and a little more dangerous until things get bad, and then, okay, we need unpredictable and dangerous. It made a little more sense to, okay, here's where we're calling him in with the Austin Butler take on the character that is much more of a kind of unhinged maniac, compared to Sting, who seemed firmly in control at all times, but just really enjoyed killing.
Mhm. Definitely a little more unhinged, and they build up to him more as a villain.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you another thing that I actually really, and this kind of surprised me with as amazing looking as the new film is. There is another thing that I honestly preferred the Lynch film for. I don't, and it's not, I don't think as much my bias, or it's certainly not ironic, an ironic take on it. Like, uh, I legitimately love the final attack of the Fremen on Arakeen on the Emperor's ship, with
Mhm.
riding the sandworms in the Lynch version. It's really big. That Toto soundtrack.
Yeah.
I love the Emperor's literally getting in there with his submarine esque fighter thing. They're firing the cannons, and you've literally got this. The effects of the old one are great in some areas
Mhm.
as well. Like with the, as you know, I love the practical and the animatronic worm. There is this one scene, I don't, I think it might be stop motion or it's animatronic, but like it's pretty smooth, where the worm rears up on its head and kind of grumbles to like go in and
Yeah.
like almost like strike like a serpent. And you don't see anything like that in the Villeneuve version. It's weird how some things are understated, but how the rest of it's very big and operatic. The final fight was, I mean, I guess it was more personal, but even riding on the sandworms themselves, and I think metaphorically, maybe this is to make it seem more like they're riding through the desert with desert
Mhm.
power, right?
Yeah.
But the worms never really completely come up from underneath the ground, whereas you remember the old Lynch worms were completely
Yeah.
above ground,
Yeah.
which I think kind of adds to the immense size of them. And you see the little Sardaukar running, like and that surprisingly I think worked better in the old version, because you get the size of, wow, like the Emperor's forces are outmatched here. He's summoned all the worms personally after he has the water of life, and there's that whole dream sequence, which also I think was kind of done a little bit better. Like the water of life was kind of understated in this
Yeah.
one, so it's I understand some of the things he pick and shows, but for the grander, I mean, maybe he just said I'll make it less complicated, but even something as simple as the final battle was not quite as big and grandiose as I thought it would have been.
Yeah. I was surprised at how quick it was in the Villeneuve
Yeah.
version, where it felt like, oh, okay, here they're coming in, and okay, we're going to use the nukes, we're going to do this and this and this, and it's
Hmm.
all over very abruptly to my mind.
Hmm.
Um, where Lynch, I didn't sit there with a stopwatch or anything. Lynch felt longer, it felt more complete, it felt more like a giant battle. And I think it helped, I think it helps to have practical effects. They can sometimes look bad, but it helps to have something actually there, even if it's a miniature, even if it's paper mache.
Hmm.
But it's something that can, there's definitely moments in Lynch that look a little cheesy, like the sandworm riding as they're like walking up to this
Hmm.
big wall and like grabbing on a rope, and that I
Hmm.
think I think that the Paul's first ride sequence was very well done in Villeneuve. That worked very well. The
Hmm.
like billowing sands and this
Oh yeah.
holding on through a sandstorm in the sense that like he's holding on for dear life. That Lynch never quite felt like anyone was in serious danger riding on these
No,
sandworms. But
no. But I would also say that I do think he captured the danger of the worm, particularly in what would have been
mhm,
part one with attacking the Thopter. I
yeah,
think you got when it comes up and eats the
yeah,
sand, the spice harvester. Yeah, I think that one was good. But you're right. I think And I want to think that might have been a choice because they lean much more into Paul, his power, his chosen one allegory, and the fact that he connects completely with the planet and one with the worms and their part in things, and you literally get the sense that he has control over them. Whereas you're right, it's like he's called the big one. It's the legend Shai-Hulud versus you're right in the new one. It's like okay, is Paul going to make it? Is there still some
Yeah.
doubt for sure?
Yeah. 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 It does play up that a little better, I think. Um, though again, they're two different ends. Lynch is just like, yeah, it's hero's journey. This is the triumphant moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like it literally, the rains fall at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
That puts a um definitive capper on this, even if it doesn't really make sense in the context of
The
yeah.
grander, like wait a minute, he literally could change the weather because he is the Kizak Sederac. His powers are so great that he will literally terraform the planet to bring water here.
Yeah.
When that's not exactly how that works.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whatever. It was a cool ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, whatever. He's the savior. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're not planning to
Yeah,
do a
it's
Dune
pretty funny.
Messiah, that's a fine ending. Yes, the waters come, everything's better.
Yeah,
Kind of a
which
thing.
is which is weird because I know for Lynch they were talking about making hopefully turning it into a Star Wars thing, like you said, and that ending makes me think, which I don't know much about the what Dune's final cut whole. I know that whole
Yeah.
debacle he's mad about. Was that the ending he chose, or would it have been something else?
I mean, I
You
imagine it
know?
would have been something else. And it is something too that could have, being Lynch, we could have started Dune's Messiah with, oh, it was a dream. It was another vision of the rains falling.
Ooh, nice.
Um, and it turns out we still have all this work to do, like committing
Mhm.
massive genocide that
Oh,
I am curious to see how much they're going to lean into that with, or how much Villeneuve will, how far can he push things for mass audiences?
yeah.
I'm curious.
I'm curious too because I think as we both noted they focus much more on that aspect of the hero's journey and the good and evil, and even though they have mentioned the whole Bene Gesserit implanting these ideas, manipulating these religious beliefs, and okay, it is of course the interesting idea of if Paul is really the Messiah, because he's done these things, or is it just by happenstance and he's using it to his advantage? So there's always that question up in the air, and as we, not to go too deep into spoilers, but things don't necessarily go that great. Paul's fears of the holy war, kind of are validated, and then there's of course his kids and things that happen with his family and with Alia, because she is. I don't know. We don't really talk much about Alia. She does become, the abomination. She's kind of a problem. How did you feel about their handling of Alia and voicing from the womb, and versus just being accelerated growth in the Lynch one? Um, I, how do you feel about their handling of Alia?
Yeah, both of them, both of them are a little bit. I mean, the Lynch one gets to a certain like uncanniness that I think works. It does capture that sense of this is not, it's a child with the deep voice.
Why don't you tell them both who I really am?
Yeah, yeah, it's that
Pretty weird.
yeah, where the Wumalia, I think, it's an interesting idea. I get why they did that. Again, it's a way to stand out from the Lynch version. It's will hopefully set things up for the next one. It's
Mhm.
also like maybe they don't know what they're, might be
What
something.
to do?
Yeah, we haven't figured out what we're gonna do yet, because it always struck me. It's one of those things that always, and it's a something in Herbert as well, that like
Mhm.
the timeline is very condensed and
wonky.
short, where
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, this is like 6 months later, that he had.
Mhm.
And I get that, Paul's the chosen one, but learning the language and learning how to worm ride and
Yeah.
doing all this
No.
stuff in the space of
Character building.
I'm
Take your
like,
time.
yeah, yeah. As a teacher, getting my students to figure out how to write an essay in 16 weeks and in 4 months is
Mhm.
quite their deal as is. I can't imagine, yeah. But yeah,
Are you there?
yeah,
Sorry, kids.
yeah, no, yeah. I love my students. It's
um,
just yeah, I don't think
takes time.
yeah, especially if you're also fighting a guerrilla war in between all of this and having to travel
Well,
via
hey, what
sandworm and
educator can't balance that? You wear many hats,
yeah,
Peter. I
that's
didn't
true.
know.
Yeah,
Since
yeah,
watch those rebellion
yeah,
distant planets.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I got another one for you. Speaking of all in the womb, I uh, I really like Rebecca Ferguson a lot
Mhm.
as Jessica. Um, I think they do a lot with her character. I think it's great to have a strong woman, strong female
Yeah,
character, and I like the fact that she just had a lot to do,
yeah,
and but I also I always liked the Lady Jessica in the Lynch version, even though I guess she had less to do. Um, but I don't know. Did you? How do you feel about Lady Jessica? I guess as a character and how she's handled overall? Because I never really like. I feel like even in the fandom of Dune, Jessica does not get brought up too much in the discourse.
no,
And even though I think she's important, which is why do you think she's oddly overlooked? And I think maybe Villeneuve said, no, I need to. She's the mother figure. I need
yeah,
to show how important she is to still guiding Paul when he's joining the Fremen with Stilgar and everything.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I mean, I think I liked Ferguson's performance a lot. I think it added to the character who is and it's a problem with Herbert. I felt like she's kind of underwritten the source material where she kind of is just often kind of a plot device.
She's just worried all the time.
Yeah,
Worried
she's just
mom.
there to be like, Paul, look out, like, you know,
That's I like it. That's in a
yeah,
nutshell. It's Jessica's character. Paul, look out!
yeah, yeah,
And
we're
that's parents in general, isn't it? Just
yeah, yeah,
don't mess up. Don't get hurt. Yeah, there you go.
yeah,
It
yeah,
works.
yeah. Look both ways before crossing the desert,
The sandworm.
Yeah, but I liked that she was, she had a lot more agency here. She was part, we set it up with, okay, she goes south first to sort of prepare the way, and how she converts the doubters to this. I'm gonna start with the people that are most playing on that fear element. The fear of the mind kill. I'm gonna start with the people that are scared, and then spread out from there, to prepare the way that I think um, works very well and helps get past the problem with the Lynch version, and a problem a little bit with again with the book, where it's a little bit white saviory, where it's Paul comes in and he is the chosen one, and everybody kind of bows down. They do a lot more. They do a very good job building to that point of, yeah, this is, Benny Gesserit have been doing this for so long, but we're also seeing how it's specifically playing up Paul and setting up how this is going to unfold, and justifying it in a way that, and I think some people overlooked. I have seen some of the discourse online of, oh yes, it's just another white savior
Oh
narrative,
yeah.
but it is
Um,
set up that Jessica is sort of using her position and abilities to,
Manipulate.
yeah,
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I thought yeah, I don't really think too much about the white savior thing, especially because I think that it's a pretty diverse cast anyway. That's pretty well integrated, with not like too much attention drawn to it. I like just accepting that like Dr. Kynes was, I think, like a black woman, for instance. Like no
yeah,
man, no big focus on, just, oh, okay, that's fine. did nothing about Kine said like he needed to be an old Max von Sydow type. Although I did like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but yeah, so I think that's fine. Um, I mean, Paul could be they could have Atreides could have easily not been white, but why they cast them as Caucasian is I'm sure another conversation, but whatever. No, no, the I do think it's kind of cool though that I always got this sense in the book because I know that the Dune lore religions have kind of shifted and cultures have shifted. You got your Orange Catholics, for instance, and I mean,
Mhm.
I always got this feeling like the Fremen. They talk about how the Fremen have different sects between the North and the South, and they have different beliefs, and they always felt very kind of Islamic to me,
Mhm.
and I think that's probably deliberate. And I think that the movie tried to echo that a little more with the language, sound, and some of the casting choices. So because Arrakis is sort of like the Middle East, that means spice could equal
Yeah.
oil, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure some of that was deliberate, and I like the fact that they acknowledged that might have been more what Herbert was going for about the roots of where Islam would originate. So the fact that Paul is a white guy, I didn't think necessarily factored, you know, uh, because they were just like, hey, he is who he is, and whether or not he was white's more just casting. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of those. I'm sure there are other. We could probably do a whole thing. All other actors that we could have cast as Paul, or.
Sure,
Um, but I think I think it is a problem with the 1984 version that we don't
everyone's so
actually.
white.
Yeah. Like even then, yeah, like the Fremen are also. You could say okay, they're
White.
coded as Islamic
Actually,
here, but they like the Lynch version, they're just like, yeah, they're white people that live in the desert, everybody in space.
yeah. I, which I mean, I guess maybe there could be white people that live on the space planet, but no, the desert planet in space. Like, but yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. There are, I don't think any major character in the Lynch version is white. I don't, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I literally remember one of the Emperor's background general guys was not white, and that's the only person I could think of.
Yeah.
So Dune's so white, Peter.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, that is a good point that there is I mean it's
well,
1984 and they're trying to do a
uh,
Star Wars, but
look, that's been a problem for a long time with lack of
yeah.
inclusion. So hopefully we're moving a better direction there. Although that is a pretty good segue because you mentioned how who we'd cast for Paul. So as you look at the characters, do you like Timothy Chalamet? Do you like Kyle McGuoch or I forget who played him in the Dune miniseries, but I thought that guy was pretty good too.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I mean they are all playing the character in slightly different ways that I think is interesting. They feel like different performances. It doesn't feel like yes, everyone's just doing it, again, McLaughlin's probably the straightest, you know, white savior, messiah.
he's the
He
straightest,
is
whitest
very,
guy.
very white bread, in a way
No,
that not yeah, it's
pretty
weird.
standard.
Yeah, it's weird rewatching the movie and going, right, this is Agent Dale Cooper just a few years later playing it.
Well,
Yeah.
well, hey, I thought he gave it his all, and he for like your first role to try to have that big of a part, that
Yeah.
epic. I mean, I think he pulled it off pretty well.
Yeah, I think he played the role that he was hired to play there. If you're looking for a star, if they were trying to make a Star Wars, he played it, a Luke Skywalker. He played it like Luke Skywalker. Specifically like a New Hope. So not a lot of nuance there, but a little bit. But did it
Little,
well, and yeah, did the played a the does have all of the films have a nice little arc, but I think he does the arc very well of kind of innocent, wide-eyed youth to um, savior of Arrakis, in a way that Chalamet always felt. I don't think he did kind of the like he always I felt like he started further on the journey, that he was a little more aware and a little less guileless maybe.
Hmm.
Um, but I really like
A little more, yeah, a little more maybe accepting of his role, but at the same time, still lacking that confidence, still questioning himself a lot, which Paul does. So that's
yeah,
good.
yeah, and
Good.
that's an important part of the character is having that self-doubt. That Yeah, I think I think all three of them were well cast for the movie that they're the movie or miniseries that they were going to be in. Um, so yeah, maybe probably the miniseries. I don't know his name, but I think I mean, part of it, he has the best. He has the arc because he's there. He has a lot more to do. We get a lot more time with him and get to kind of see where it's going to go. Where I'd
Hmm.
be interested if if in the '80s, if we'd done Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, other kept the franchise going, I would have been interested to see what Kyle MacLachlan would have done with increasing complexity with this character.
Hmm. No, and
Uh,
I think it would have been cool to see that go too. I looked it up, Peter. Mark Newman played him in
okay,
the sci-fi miniseries.
okay, yeah, yeah.
So,
I think that's if if you um can stand some spotty special effects, but really like Dune, I think that's you know
oh yeah,
yeah. If you're left wanting more Dune after this and don't want to read the books, the sci-fi miniseries is
way
probably
to go.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Children of Dune, Children of Dune, Children of Dune, I think is a good substitute for the next couple books. From what I understand, and just from even from just reading the first book, I really think
Yeah.
it captures that essence of Herbert, probably the purest.
Yeah, it does pull a lot of elements from the different um it is sort of a condensed and remixed version, but it does what it does well. So if you're kind of like looking for more Dune, track down the sci-fi mini series, to really
I agree.
yeah.
Yeah. No, no, that definitely. I think they all do good things their own way, and I have a feeling if you love Dune, you'll probably love most of them. I mean, I feel like you said people take issue with some of them sometimes, like the '84 one, but yeah, it's getting more love. I
Mhm.
think as time
Yeah,
goes by,
yeah, I'm
getting
glad.
more
I'm
awareness.
glad. Yeah, I'm glad to see these in the conversation and not just because I was, for a long time, until the sci-fi miniseries, it was just the '84 Dune, and it was kind of often, and again,
What
I
is
think unfairly, oh,
what
it's
is
just
this?
a bad Star Wars knockoff instead of no, they're trying to do something else. It's not always successful. It does have some pacing issues, and
Mhm.
but um,
What you got to do?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a different time. You worked with what you had, and
Well, I'll tell you what. If you have any final thoughts, we can wrap it up. But I did have one question for you, real quick.
oh, sure.
Do you do you think there's any possibility that we'll ever get the Lynch cut? Hashtag the Lynch cut.
Um,
You think it's possible?
I think it's possible. I mean, everything is possible. Um, I think the success of Dune Part Two, does increase that chance that if they're doing I guess this would be the 40th anniversary 2024 of
Oh
Lynch.
wow, yeah.
So maybe the 40th, maybe maybe the 50th. Who knows what where Dune goes from here.
Hmm.
But I would think, yeah, maybe we get a Criterion collection or something that would be the Lynch.
Oh
Uh,
well, that Justin could tell you he's given me most of the Lynch movies as gifts. So
yeah,
hey, just do it. You guys have Armageddon in there. Get Dune
yeah,
Criterion.
yeah. And I
Come on.
realize there's rights issues and other stuff, and I don't know, who knows where everything is, but I think it's plausible. I think You know, I think especially with the success of this, it shows there's a market for this. It shows there's interest in this story. And again, I would love to have a 4-disc Criterion edition with the Lynch cut and all the behind the scenes stuff and all the commentaries and all that.
Well, I know there's the Arrow one, which Justin was nice enough to get me, but I know that's still the original. And Lynch
Yeah,
has always, of course, been very resistant to ever touch the movie again because he was so mad about its production. But I don't know. I kind of hope you just mellow out, get over it. And it's been 40 years. People do like your movie. Sit down, recut it, talk about it, and complain about it as much as you want. And be like, just make sure that if you ever do a movie, you get Final Cut. And just you can use that as a platform.
yeah, yeah. I
Make
think it
more of
would
the
be
movie you want to make.
a good
Just,
opportunity to yeah. But yeah,
yeah,
I could see him. I mean, who knows with David Lynch? He is a strange creature.
he
Uh,
is. He's an interesting man for
but I
sure.
could I could see him saying, okay, you know what?
Whatever.
Yeah, I you know
Give me a
I
big fat check so I can make all Twin
yeah.
Peaks Part Four.
Yeah,
Whatever
yeah,
else I want.
yeah. Twin Peaks: The Return of the Return. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I would hope that we would get it at some point, but hopefully before he dies. But I could also see it,
Yes.
somebody putting it together after. Again, assuming this footage still exists and all that other, all the
Well,
usual caveats with.
there was of course the TV version that they put on, which had scenes he didn't want in, and there's like a fan recut as well that's on YouTube, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah,
But there's definitely scenes that were unused or
mhm.
that might need some polishing. But who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I would hope that we would get that at some point. You know, but there's all sorts of interesting lost and incomplete media out there that will unfortunately never see the light of day.
True, true. Well, I think we could probably wrap it up soon, Peter. But do you have any final thoughts, feelings you'd like to share before we conclude, or
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, all
covered
all
a lot?
all dunes are good in their own way. All dunes are valid. If you liked the Villeneuve version, I would suggest trying to track down the miniseries. Lynch is its own thing. It is. I think it's worth watching. But I think the miniseries, if you really like that world, if you want to see more of that, and just don't have time to read the book, although yes, always read the book. Herbert's pretty
Yeah, read the
readable.
book.
Yeah, it's
Play the
it's.
video games too if you can.
Oh yeah,
They got
yeah,
Dune 2 strategy games.
yeah, yeah. The start of real time strategy, Dune 2.
Hmm. Hmm.
Started a whole video game revolution. But yeah, check those out. And I part of and I don't want to, I liked Dune 2 quite a bit. It's probably the best movie that I've seen so far this year, although it's still pretty early. Um
Sam.
yeah, see it on the big screen. See it on the biggest screen you can. It's still out in on the IMAXs and all of those.
Absolutely.
But also I reserve final judgment on the film until we get Dune Messiah and actually a complete story instead of this what we have gotten so far. But I'm excited to see that in 2028 or whenever they get around to making it.
And you can get ready for your complete sit down of the whole actual viewing part one and two as one film someday. What would
Yeah,
that be? 5.5 hours, 6 hours?
yeah, yeah.
Oof.
Just do the full like Lord of the Rings extended cut editions where you just sit down and
Oh man.
you
Yeah,
just
that's right.
spend a day. But
Do some Dune.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, I'm glad that this franchise still has legs, and I'm curious to see where it goes next. And um, yeah, check them out.
Cool. Well, thank you for popping by on Mantic Reviews, Peter. It's always good to see you and talk about sci-fi. We'll have to talk about some other ones. We had a list a while back, so maybe we could track a few of them down. There might be another thing we could talk about shortly after we hang up, and who knows, there may be another video recorded if you feel like it. But I'll leave
Yeah.
them hanging to figure out if that happens for weeks on end, and then they'll eventually be like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I guess."
we do want to you do have like a cliffhanger of like maybe we'll get back to
Yeah,
something, or maybe it
yeah,
you know
yeah.
maybe
Keep it
we just
open, like
yeah
Dune 2, you know.
yeah, but
Yeah.
we might also just end with Zendaya hopping on the sandworm and zooming off in the distance. We might never follow up on that storyline. So
Yeah, yeah, she's just gonna be the second lady forever, you know.
yeah,
But ooh, there's something about the repetitive nature of generations that I just thought about. But it's too late. We've already ended the video, so that's
save
it.
it for
They'll
Dune
never know.
Messiah coming 2028.
Uh, uh, yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, 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 yeah. Chinese conversation later.
Yeah. All right.
All right, everybody. Stay magical.
Stay magical.